Welcome in, everybody. My name is Benjamin Kennedy, and this is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod, episode 4. Thank you guys so much for joining me this evening. Uh, Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the 23-24 season. We're going to talk about some different storylines, some different surprises that caught my attention throughout this season. Um, some of these are surprises, some of these are just more storylines. I didn't really know what to call it, so I was like, "Oh, whatever. We'll just put both titles up there and kind of talk through these. Before we get to that, though, of course, last night, Florida Panthers punching their ticket, winning the Eastern Conference for the second time in 2 seasons. In a couple of days, I'll be doing a little breakdown on the Florida Panthers, talk about them a bit, and do the same for either Edmonton or Dallas, whoever ends up winning the series. Right now, it's looking like Edmonton 2-0 in the second period, game 6. So if that holds, we might be seeing an Edmonton Florida final. That would be all sorts of fun, wouldn't it? So we're going to dive right in here, guys. And these are in no particular order. These are just kind of how, as they kind of entered my head, I put them on the board. And for anybody that watches a lot of podcasts, I mentioned the hockey guy in my first video. Whiteboards are a hockey guy thing. So I was really hesitated buying a whiteboard and starting to use it. I'm not going to use it for many videos. It's going to be more for things like this. That is a hockey guy signature, and I'm certainly not here to rip anybody off or anything like that. So, with that said, first surprise on the board here was going all the way back to July, the Mike Babcock hire in Columbus. This one I will say did catch me off guard. Columbus, a young team, a lot of young players, not a team that was really in a win now mode. And Babcock, with all of his baggage, had been a few years out of the league after he had worked in Toronto. I was a little surprised that Columbus brought him in. He was hired early July, 2-year contract, $8 million hit. Um, and you just kind of all right. Well, smart people running these organizations. Maybe Mike has changed his ways. Maybe he's caught up with the new NHL. In terms of how to coach and how to treat players. So you can just, I guess, for a moment, give him a benefit of the doubt. And then I believe it was September 17th, where he gave his resignation. I think he was getting fired, so they gave him that option to get out. But talk about setting a team back for a season that was already going to be more of a building year. But just with all the other coaches that were available, it was just really a surprise to see Babcock resurface. And I would be shocked if he gets another opportunity in the NHL. But yeah, definitely one that threw me for a loop. Don Waddell is now the GM in Columbus and worked in Carolina for a number of years. I think he's an excellent hire there as a GM. I think he's going to do a lot of really great things for that organization and should get them back on the map. Adam Fantilli's there, and they got a pretty high draft pick again this year too. So I think future should be bright for Columbus. Number 2 on the board, Washington Capitals making the playoffs. This one, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. Not because they don't have the pedigree. They definitely have the pedigree in that organization, but didn't make the playoffs a year ago. Sold at the deadline again this year. So last 2 years, you remember the Bruins trade getting Orlov and Hathaway, and they traded Mantha to Vegas this year. So they were really in a sell mode. Um, didn't see this coming. I mean, you look at their goal differential, -37. Teams usually don't make the playoffs when they're -37. End up with that wild card too. Hey, good on them. They worked hard. They fought hard to get there. Yeah, you can kind of look at New Jersey falling apart. Philly kind of ran out of gas, ran out of energy. We'll talk about Philly here in a minute. Um, Detroit had an opportunity right there at the end too. So there were a lot of other teams that kind of paved the way for Washington, but Washington also had to win those games down the stretch. I think they did win a game in Boston right there at the end too. So good on them for making it. You'd rather make it than not make it. Obviously, got swept by the Rangers in that first round, but was absolutely a shocker for me. Alex Ovechkin, I question putting him on the board. Um, Listen, Father Time catches everybody, and I think we were all, though, a little bit surprised to see how well Ovechkin had played the prior year, to see him have such a slow start. And it does kind of parlay with Washington making the playoffs too. You would expect if Washington was going to make it, that Ovechkin was going to have just a monster year. Second half of the year, he rebounded. 31 goals. What was he? Uh, 31 goals, 34 6, 65 points he ends up with. He will be 39 in September. It's just when you see these, superstar larger than life athletes finally kind of hit that first, age bump, it's always a little shocking. And I think for me, I wasn't really expecting it this year. Nice to see him bounce back. Still hoping he catches Gretzky's record. That'd be just a great story. But yeah, it was definitely a storyline first half of the year. A lot of NHL guys talking about it, wondering, is he? I think at one point he was averaging. He was, I think, projected to have like 16 goals for the whole season, which would have just been a really low number for someone like Ovi. So good on him for rebounding, and we'll obviously see at 39 years old what he has left going into next season. When you go back to October, a lot of interest in that Atlantic Division. Florida doing what they did last year, Boston being there, Toronto. Everybody, of course, thought was the team that was going to run away with it. And then in, I think it was September, you get the news that Vasilevsky, their goaltender, their all-world goaltender for Tampa, going out for surgery. Um, there was at that point not really sure how long he was going to be out, but a big blow to an aging team that, of course, has a lot of winning pedigree, but wasn't quite as deep. Um, Again, those guys getting older, and Vasi's just been such a rock for them. And I just thought punt. I thought, man, if they get so far behind, in that first quarter of the year, this could be really tricky for Tampa to stay afloat, um, and to keep up. And I gotta give those goalies credit and that team credit. They rallied 9-6-5. Uh, those first 20 games there without Vasi, kept them in the hunt, kept them right there. They were close the whole year, and they were able to make the playoffs. I mean, obviously they have great talent, and Vasi didn't have his best year. But 85% of Vasi is better than most of the league. I just thought they did a tremendous job. I thought John Cooper did an incredible job managing that situation, keeping Tampa afloat. I mean, these guys know how to win. They're not not much will rattle them. Um, and Cooper's another guy that I just love as a coach. He could coach my team any day of the week. Um, so I just thought that was really impressive um, there at the start of the year. Number 5 on the board, Jonathan Quick, New York Rangers backup goaltender. Not often we talk about backup players, but Quick is obviously a different cat. Future Hall of Famer, multiple Cup winning goaltender. I put him on the board kind of as a surprise because when the Rangers signed him, I just had that moment of what in the world are you doing? Like, the guy's toast. I mean, Hall of Famer, Cup winner. He is toast. When you saw him in that last year in Vegas, and then of course at the end in or LA and Vegas, I mean his numbers were 3.5 goals against. I mean they were just way off, and he just looked like, again, time had caught up to him. And boy, oh boy, was I wrong. I think a lot of people were wrong. This year in what was he, 18-6-0 with a 2.62 goals against and a 911 save percentage. Um, Really impressive. I mean, that's a different role for him. That's not to be understated either. Sometimes when you're the starter, you don't always adjust well to being the backup. When you're in New York and you're backing up for Igor, though, it's a different story. And Igor at times did look a little human throughout parts of the stretches of the season, and I thought Quick really gave them an opportunity not to push Igor out there, every single game, gave him a chance to rest and recoup, and really helped that team just keep the flow going and got them to that President's Trophy this year. I don't know if they do that without a backup like Quick. I know probably tonight's the wrong night for Rangers fans to want to hear that, but hey, Quick helped us win the President's Trophy. But all in all, it's a great year. And I mean, he's 30, what is he, 39, 38 right now. Um, does he play again next year? I don't know. I just think that it's his legacy was already cemented, but at least if he goes out this year, um, he's going out with a much better story here at the end for his career. So good on him. If I had my Flyers hat, I'd probably be wearing my Flyers hat tonight. I'm still waiting for that one to come in the mail. But this was probably for me the biggest surprise of the year: the Philadelphia Flyers. Who had them on your bingo card being 4 points out of the playoffs at the end of the year? Not me. I certainly didn't. John Tortorella, second season, I think, behind the bench there, and just got everything out of this team this year. Nobody expected them near the playoffs. I think everybody kind of had them as a lottery team, kind of a top five in the lottery, and they were in the playoff hunt in the Metro all year, just about. Start to fall off late. You could just it was almost like a car running out of gas. You could just see them sputtering at the end, and just and Schwartz was as he does, kind of riding the guys hard, and they just didn't have enough at the end to pull that out. You did have the return of Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson that definitely helped this team out. But they also lost they also lost Carter Hart, their starting goaltender. Only played 26 games um, due to the whole uh, Team Canada peace investigation. Um, so to lose your goaltender like that and to have to basically play different backups and such to get through the year and to be that close. I thought it was just an incredible story. 87 points. They were 38, 33, and 11. Um, Torts has that, though. He has that ability to get teams that are maybe a little bit undermanned or, um, y- you know, uh, not looking great on paper to be right there. And I was personally kind of cheering for them to get in. I just think Philadelphia, outside of the original six, Philly's one of those teams where the league is just a little bit better when they're relevant and when they're making the playoffs. It's a city that obviously has a ton of sports passion, and one of those teams again, not an original six, but I think a team that just makes the NHL better when they're in there and when they're playing well. So good on towards you main guy. So we always like that. This next one, probably not a surprise, right? More of just a continuing painful storyline for the Buffalo Sabres. I'm sorry, Buffalo fans. I really am. I didn't want to put this on the board, but your playoff-less streak has reached 13 seasons. Just, man, that has got to just hurt. Um, I looked over some of their rosters they had. I think the 2017 roster popped up on Facebook a couple of days ago, and they had like an all-star lineup. And you would just think one of these years they would just get lucky and just sneak in as a 7 or 8, one of the wild card spots. But um, they've been in a tough division. Obviously, you see all the years of Tampa being so good. Boston's had a couple of years in there. Florida now being dominant. Toronto's been really good, regular season team throughout those years. So it hasn't been an easy division to be part of. But boy, oh boy, to have 13 straight seasons in a city that is such a passionate sports town. I mean, you see the passion they have for the Buffalo Bills now that they're good with their QB and everything going on there. Yeah, I'm a Boston fan, but I am kind of hoping to see Buffalo improve and get back into the playoffs. I just think it would be wonderful for that city and for that organization that themselves have um, you know, a long history. So sorry, Buffalo. Wish you all the best going into next season, but 13 years that's a drought. That is absolutely a drought. Next one, number 8, protection gear. So it's a little bit more of a sombering story. Many of you remember the story that came out of the English league, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of the league. But 29-year-old Adam Johnson, American player, that played in the NHL a little bit. Tragic accident, passes away, cut by a skate blade. Like I said, very very sad story. You don't expect it, And it's amazing, however, that for as much contact as you have in hockey, as much players falling down and skates going up in the air, it actually is amazing that something like this hasn't happened sooner. There's been a lot of close calls. I mean, I know Evander Kane a few years ago. We all remember that the skate blade over his wrist, and he was able to get quick attention and was fine. Missed a few months of the season. Was able to make it out. And you've seen throughout this year more and more players start to wear the neck guards, starting to wear the wrist guards. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong if anybody knows, but I think it's optional right now. I believe any change like that as a mandatory change would have to come through negotiations in their collective bargaining agreement between the league and the Players Association. So I don't think you're going to see any change anytime soon, but I do think you're going to continue to see more and more players opt to wear the gear around their necks and around their wrists. I think it makes perfect sense. And eventually it could become one of those grandfathered in things where, maybe kind of like they do with the having to wear the bucket when you come out for pre-skate. That's a rule now where if you're grandfathered in, you don't have to do it, but new players come in and you have to. I could see the league taking some sort of approach with the protection gear. Players will talk about, you add new equipment, it's uncomfortable. Hockey players are creatures of habit, so they're going to have to make the gear, work in stride and in rhythm with the rest of the equipment. I think for most players to want to adopt it, but um, it just stinks that it takes such a tragedy um, to instill and install change in a system, or in a sport like this. And that's unfortunately how most of this works, right? But hopefully, some good can come from that tragedy, and you certainly saw that trend pick up this year. Number 9, Edmonton Oilers, the start to their season. And as we're sitting here watching Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals, what an amazing turnaround. They've had slow starts before, but this one was kind of bad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They were 5-12-1, right around U.S. Thanksgiving, November 22nd. Bad losses to Vancouver there to start the season. Um, Woodcock gets fired, and Jess is looking. I mean, I think they had a loss to San Jose in there. I mean, a Connor McDavid led team should never lose to San Jose. Just a bad start for them. Then you go into right around Christmas, starting on the 21st of December through January 27th. They go on a 16-game winning streak, right on the cusp of the record. So quite a tale of kind of two beginnings, right? Such a horrid start, and then being able to catch up with all those wins, and obviously now I think they're one period away from going to the Stanley Cup final. So it's just quite remarkable. Again, not necessarily a surprise to see them rebound from it, but I think you're always surprised to see a team that I personally had them as the West winner this year. I had Carolina and Edmonton were my picks this year. So I was happy to see them kind of pick it up and get to where they are today. Yeah, definitely a surprise for me. And last, and certainly not least, and not a surprise, I'm going to get into this one a little bit. Arizona Coyotes, fine. Oh, finally moving to Utah, or just finally moving out of Arizona. This is been an albatross around the necks of the NHL for a number of years. I mean, this organization has never had the best ownership. They have gone through a handful of owners. I think it was owned by the league at one point, or run by the league at one point. And of course, they've been trying to find a deal to get a new arena built. Um, I think it's already kind of an embarrassment that Arizona had to go and play at Arizona State for a couple of years. You don't realize all the lost revenue that the league and the other owners feel, and when that happens. And there was no way that the league was going to allow the Coyotes to go and do this for another 2 or 3 years. Big. It was a big story all throughout the year. NHL Network, NHL Radio did a great job covering it, and it goes back, I think, to February when the Tempe, Arizona vote happened. They were voting on the big complex and building a new arena, shopping and hotels and everything that was going to go with it, and it got voted down. And that did seem like the death blow to this ownership and this organization staying in Arizona. Um, Gary Bettman has been just adamant about the Arizona, that Phoenix market, and I get it. I've been there a few times myself. It's a big city. It's a big media market. It's a big sports market. It's one of those emerging markets for the league as well. When you look at all this success that the league has had in southern markets, typically non-traditional markets, you look at Carolina, you look at Nashville, Tampa, Miami, Dallas. They've been wildly successful in those markets. Yeah, it helps to have winning teams, but they've been very, very successful in those markets. And I don't think the league is going to give up on Arizona. They do have, or the previous owner does have a 5-year window to get an arena going, because there's some talk, there's a bid out there. He's going to bid on a piece of land, and might have a chance to build it. Great. The league may look to expand back to Arizona. They are going to expand. There's been a lot of chatter about that, but I do think you'll see expansion in the league, and Arizona and the Phoenix area will probably, if I think his name is Mirello, the owner, has an arena in place. I think they try it again and go back. I do think that hockey can work there. I think it just takes the right ownership, the right, not just the right arena, but the right location. You want to make sure it's a location where fans can get to it, and fans don't have to go out of their way. That was, I know, a big problem with the Montreal Expos, and part of why they moved is their arena was, or their baseball stadium wasn't easy to get to, and of course I think it was the '94 strike really hurt hurt their ability to stay there. They were running away with the NL East. Not going to talk baseball, but it just kind of reminds me of the importance of having the arena in the right spot, in the right location. I think Utah is going to be a super fun hockey town. I cannot wait to see what this looks like. Smaller market. They do a great job supporting the Utah Jazz. It's obviously a more of a winter type city in Salt Lake City. Um, I think they're going to come out and support it. I think for a smaller market, it's going to be wildly successful, and I can't wait to see it. They're going to go with just the Utah on the jerseys for this year. Um, the owner had narrowed it down to maybe 4 or 5 names that they're going to put out there next year. Mammoth being one, Yeti being another name. If you have any thoughts on that, please leave your comments down below. I kind of like both names. I probably maybe lean to the Yeti. Just I like the way it rolls off the tongue, Utah Yeti. Uh, but yeah, those are my kind of top 10 um, kind of storyline slash surprises as we looked at this season. Like I said, as we get into next week, I will have a video talking about the Florida Panthers. Congrats to them. I will have a video on either the Edmonton Oilers or the Dallas Stars, whoever wins the West. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you like what you hear, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you all again soon.